the Agile brand.
Welcome to the Delighted Customers Podcast, now part of the Agile Brand Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mark Slayton, and I am so glad you're here. I empower leaders to delight their customers, and I talk to guests with a wide range of expertise who share meaningful insights, wisdom, and practical tips that you can use immediately. I'm also excited to announce the Trusted Guide Roadmap Masterclass for CX leaders who struggle with executive buy-in and are ready to go beyond CX fundamentals. The Masterclass gives you proven frameworks and takes you step by step through a 4-step model that will move you past the frustration of not getting your work done. It's unique because it's live, interpersonal, hands-on, and we give you tools and templates to help you build your CX roadmap. To learn more, visit empoweredcx.com. That's EMPOWEREDCX.com. And now on to the show. Well, I'm excited to share this episode that aired in 2023 with one of the most influential people globally when it comes to customer experience, and that's Fred Reichheld. In this episode, Fred talks about the personal health challenge he overcame and how it inspired him to write Winning on Purpose. We also talked about the power of referrals and how to operationalize them to get exponential growth. I think you'll learn as much as I did from one of the CX masters. Fred Reichheld is the creator of the Net Promoter System of Management, the founder of Bain & Company's loyalty practice, and the author of 5 books, including the New York Times bestseller, The Ultimate Question 2.0. He's on the Mount Rushmore of customer experience, as far as I'm concerned. And there is so much to pull out of today's episode that's useful and practical, and you might learn some things you didn't expect. I know I did. We talk about his new book, Winning on Purpose, what he calls financial capitalism, the pioneer's edge for leading companies, and he gets vulnerable with some personal challenges. Let's jump right in. Well, I am so excited today to have Fred Reichheld on the Delighted Customers podcast. Really, if you've been in the customer experience world for any period of time, Fred does not need any introduction. And so excited about his new book, Winning on Purpose. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But first, Fred, welcome to the Delighted Customers podcast.
Good to be here, Mark. Thank you.
Absolutely. And, you know, early on in the book, Fred, you get very personal, very quick. You talk about a personal story about your sense of urgency for writing this book. And we're going to talk more about what white space there was for the content. But more importantly, you were overcoming a personal battle and you felt a sense of urgency. And it resonated with me, but first, I'd like you to share from your perspective, whatever you might feel comfortable sharing with the audience.
Sure, I shared it in the book. I got a cancer diagnosis, and it was a point in my life where it would have made sense to retire because it takes all your energy to fight through that if you get lucky enough to make it. But it actually spurred me on to get committed to writing that book, Winning on Purpose. And the reason was it was a reminder for me, but it's probably a reminder for everybody. Your days are limited. What do you want to accomplish while you have the energy and the time? And the movement that I think we kickstarted in delighting customers and measuring progress based on loving customers, making their lives better. It was getting off on the wrong course. There were people who were saying, oh, I've adopted Net Promoter, what a great invention, and then they do it completely wrong, and contrary to the philosophy behind it. So I felt like we really had to get it back on track.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, and you did a great job and introduced some new concepts as well that weren't in the previous, but just going back to my own personal experience, thanking you profusely for the work that you did and the development of NPS, not only the development of NPS, back when I started as a practitioner, shifting from consulting to work in a bank, but promoting it and telling case studies. I remember a video I saw of you at Rackspace, and then I think there was one of Schwab, and then what was the other one that you shared? So really helpful stories of how impactful this whole idea of net promoter and not the score, but net promoter system. Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, and the overarching message of winning on purpose is that it's not just NPS and marketing success is one of 10 things you have to get right. It's the foremost thing. It's the center of the universe, and the world doesn't see it that way yet. Most companies think, yeah, I've got a lot of stakeholders. Customers are important, but so are shareholders and employees and the environment and social governance issues. And they're all, and of course they are. And yet, if you don't pick one as the center of your purpose, your existence, you just are kidding yourself, and you'll give mediocre results to all of those stakeholders.
Yeah. Well, so you did a good job of explaining why it's important to come back to that now and what the white space was for the book. What do you think are the most common misperceptions that people and companies have about Net Promoter Score?
Oh, I think they believe that you can make it a KPI or a bonus target,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how you can get people to take it seriously. In fact, it destroys its credibility and makes it a joke, because surveys are so easy to manipulate, and so few people understand the subtleties behind sample bias and response bias, and stuff that scientists and medical researchers understand, but they go to grad school for a couple of years to finally understand it. And a lot of people just don't understand the subtlety and the soft nature of surveys, nor do they think carefully how hard it is for people to speak the truth in giving feedback, when they know that it might hurt that person, whether it's an Uber driver or a customer service rep at American Express. But if you link it to their bonus, then the customer is not going to give negative feedback. They're just going to give courtesy 10s or courtesy 5 stars. Because, frankly, what they're frustrated about is something other than that person that they're dealing with. It's something in a system or a process flaw. And so you basically shut down the ability to gather honest, constructive feedback.
Yeah. And for people who are CX leaders in organizations or responsible for leading the customer experience efforts, at a pretty high level, like, what would you say is the best way for them to do a good job of collecting customer data? Would you say it's, typically what I did and what many of us did was we ran it off a platform. We pushed out surveys that had a closed feedback loop system, and we could set up when and how and who they went out to. And now there's a lot of talk about the 85% of people that we miss through, that are available in unstructured feedback.
You mean 99% of the people you miss? Well, people don't respond to surveys anymore. It's nuts.
Yeah. So what would be your recommendation?
I would start back where I wrote my first book called The Loyalty Effect. It was about the microeconomics of customers and the relationships. And I would make sure that you and your C-suite understand and agree on the power of earning customer loyalty and how vital that is to generating great returns for your investors. That until you have those microeconomics well accepted and measured, all this survey stuff is sort of baloney. You knew this. You knew what made customers mad before. It's just it wasn't worth fixing it, or you thought you were constrained by the economic. You had to earn your target quarterly earnings per share. So you can't skip over this basic reality that there is a miraculous flywheel at the center of every successful business. It is, I call it the customer love flywheel. And the reason it's a miracle is because it is this miracle of value create. When you treat customers right, They come back for more and refer their friends. And that is what grows a business. Accounting today completely misses that, goes right around it and sort of deflects off of it. And you can sort of see it in the corner of your eye, maybe, but it's not what we manage to. And I think everyone, let's forget about surveys for a moment. Let's think about what is the core process behind a great business, and how are you going to measure advances and declines? And it's back for more and bring their friends.
Yeah. So those are like lagging indicators, right? Those are what they actually did with their feet.
I would say referrals are very contemporary. Probably referral is the best indicator there is. If you want one signal in the world that captures the reality of not just now, but expectations going forward, are they referring you to their friends?
Okay. And I want to get more into the earned growth model that you described in the book. But before we do, I want to circle back to this listening question, because a lot of CX practitioners are struggling with what is the best way to listen to customers. There's all sorts of ways we can listen, or we can just look at the metrics of what they've done and how they're, with their sort of operational metrics. What are your thoughts about best ways to listen?
I was with the CEO of a really big retailer, one of the biggest retailers in the world. And she said, we learn from our surveys, but it's sort of biased because they, it's awkward. It's not natural.
Mm-hmm.
And there's social, you don't want to get people in trouble and so forth. Said the place we get the real truth is when we can listen in on customers talking to other customers or prospective customers. And if we can find ways, and sometimes that's in message boards and there are different techniques, but that's where the truth lies. And I think companies should be thinking carefully about how can I listen in to what people who are saying when they refer for us or refer against us.
That's a great idea. So, and there's more and more of that this day and age, where there's forums and people writing reviews or in message boards and other places.
Yeah, and I think there's one of the things that I think was very powerful in the early days of Net Promoter was you identify a detractor, close the loop, reach out with somebody senior enough to actually understand the system and what went wrong and get to the root cause. Apologize, fix it. That closed loop is brilliant. But we don't do that with referrals, which is even more important. When you do something that's so remarkable that people go out and, as an act of love, refer a friend, you need to close the loop with the person who referred and the person who heard the referral with the same kind of thoughtful rigor. And that's where the listening is most leveraged. And I see very little of that today.
So that is a great point. There's a gap there, right? And we might as well go ahead and jump into the earned growth model, because what you're saying there is that there's a whole conversation about corporate accounting and customer accounting. And and Rob Markey said the same thing about how we really need to shift our thinking in the way we measure great companies or company success. Say more about that.
Well, if you think the miraculous customer love flywheel, customers coming back for more and bringing their friends, if you think that's the center of business success, you should measure it. And accounting doesn't today. My argument is, for heaven's sakes, you have the digital technology and all these fancy tools. Why don't you take some of the budget that you're throwing at AI, cramming more stuff at customers and thinking you're succeeding because they're tricked into buying more than they want, and say, why don't we take some of that and make sure we can account for this flywheel? What percentage of our customers are coming back and buying more? What percentage are referring their friends? These are measurable things. Accountants should be able to figure it out. They just haven't decided it's important enough yet.
Yeah, and so in the book you talked about this thing you've coined, earned growth rate, and it's essentially two components, right? NRR, net recurring, net retention,
net revenue retention,
and ENCR, earned new customer retention, those two components. So you want to break that down for the layman?
Yeah, I need another name for that second one, but it's basically back for more and refer their friends. Those are the two signals. Let's forget surveys for the moment and other kinds of listening.
Yeah.
You got to know if you've won or lost, and you won or lost when they come back for more and bring their friends. So this customer-based accounting is just saying, okay, how much of our revenue growth is coming from customers who had the experience and they liked it so much they're coming back and buying more? That's net revenue retention. And then refer their friends. How many of your new customers are coming in primarily because they heard good things from friends and colleagues? Those are the basis of earned growth. And people don't measure it today. I wrote the book over a year ago. I'll bet you there's a few dozen companies out there scratching their head and figuring out, big companies who, boy, this is hard. The way our accounting systems work today, it's not easy. I have to work at this. And that should be a signal. How screwed up is your business measurement process if you can't even tell me what percentage of your growth is coming from the miraculous flywheel, and how much is being bought through crazy expensive sales and marketing gimmicks that tend to bring in customers that have a negative net present value when you actually do the math right. And this, you're throwing sand in the air and confusing everything, and then listening. Well, let's listen more. Of course, listening is good, but let's listen for wins and listen for losses, and not just listen to any customer that happens to be bored enough that they respond to a survey.
So one of the things that I want to come back to that you said was it's really important that we not just close the feedback loop for customers that have maybe detractors or there's some issue, but those that love us, those that have referred us, we need to understand and thank them, understand, what they love about us, and thank them for really understand what it is they love about us and acknowledge them.
Yeah, and give them more tools to refer us more effectively. So there's this whole missing, the standard business thinking is, I call it financial capitalism. It is, the way I grow is to get more salespeople and make them more effective and spend on marketing and advertising and pricing and promotion gimmicks. I mean, that's how you grow. That mindset is dead wrong. The way you grow is to delight more customers and help them refer friends. Being remarkable in a way that makes people want to come back for more and bring their friends is the core of true earned growth, profitable growth, sustainable growth. And for heaven's sakes, measure that, but also intervene when you see it happen and close the loop and probe for root causes and understand how, run experiments, learn. And right now, most companies have no clue which of their new customers are coming in based on referrals and which ones are coming in based on all the marketing gimmicks and gamesmanship out there.
Yeah. And I heard you talk on Rob Markey's Net Promoter System podcast. There's a plug for Rob.
It's a great podcast. I think CX people who don't listen to that are nuts.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic and very thoughtful and insightful. And you were on it. And you were talking.
Well, I was wanted in two ways. Rob's been my co-pilot for many, many years. So a lot of the stuff that he says, it was stuff that we talked about a long time ago. So I like ripples in the pond. I feel really good about what Rob's talking about.
Yeah. So you were on that podcast, and you were talking about companies that get it right and companies that don't. And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what makes a great company.
Great companies love their customers. The leaders inspire their teams of employees to love customers. It's because it's the right thing to do. It makes the world a better place. And if you have systems to recognize and reward the teams and the people who do it, they got to feel good about themselves. What really inspires employees is doing things that they're proud of, making the world better, and loving customers in a way that it so enriches their lives that they refer it to a friend. that's the highest compliment that there is. And you got to have that's at the core of greatness.
Yeah. And also in the podcast there, and I'll bring it up here, is that there's a gap right now, right? And I know I experienced that where I was, is that we don't know, and I'm using the general term we don't know where our customers come from. And you just said that, but erecting gates to track and measure how client to client referrals or customer to customer referrals come in is a gap I see that I think people are saying either one, I don't know where to start. It feels like a really heavy lift. It's overwhelming.
I agree.
And is the juice worth the squeeze? I think the answer is yes, but could you say more about that? Is that what you're hearing also, is that don't know where, I'm overwhelmed, don't know where to start?
In the early days of Net Promoter, the big constraint was, getting SurveyMonkey or some generic survey thing going, and which customers and when and who should the responses go to. That was getting in the way of progress. It was hard. And then companies like Qualtrics and Medallia and InMoment and others developed technology platforms that really made it easy and made it the analysis automatic, very sophisticated support of business processes. So those guys really helped launch the Net Promoter revolution. What is, I think, on the pioneering edge today, and what will get us deeper into understanding which customers are coming on referral and why and so forth, there's another technology revolution required. And one of the companies I'm working most closely with is I hope is the next Qualtrics or Medallia of the referral movement. It's called Mention Me. Mention Me is a tech platform that's making it really easy to get customers to want to do a referral through the platform, not through a bribe, but by appropriate recognition. And they know that the person they refer will get a warm welcome appropriately. And as that gets more frictionless, then you finally got a tech platform that lets you start tracking and learning and improving the customer love flywheel.
Yeah, so I just want to, one of the things I like to do is pull out the gems when I hear guests saying things, just so we can double click on it. And one of the gems there was just the importance of tracking those customers that are referring other customers that love us. And it's great that Mention Me is a way that facilitates doing that. But the ability to know that you're doing because if the goal is to create this love flywheel, you have to know if you're successful or not.
If referrals are the center of the universe, then you better have a telescope that lets you see the referral process in action and dig into it and probe for root causes and test out hypotheses. The reason I mentioned Me is the only company in the world that I know of where referrals is everything. All the other referral gizmos and the simple, bribe a customer kinds of things.
Yeah.
Those are MarTech companies that do 20 different things, and this little add-on is part of the whole shtick. That doesn't get you there. Referral is everything. It really takes hard work to know, well, how much could you reward a referring customer without making it a bribe? Should it be a donation to a charity? Should it just be recognition? Should it be sort of linked into your loyalty rewards program? But there's something that's socially right that makes it worthwhile. And then how do you make it a frictionless process that's transparent to everybody? There's no gaming here. And then what do you do that's special for that referred customer that welcomes them in? And that's a science, and it's not just a one little simple process that you can add on to all your other MarTech technology.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to double click on was this, because you said it well, but you said it, I want to make sure people get this, is purchasing customers versus earning customers, right? So this, in traditional thinking, is, so do you tell companies that they don't need to do traditional marketing, whether it's, social media advertising, other advertising, discounted rates to have people come on board? Because I know in banking, which is the world I came from, um, we would, and I'm just going to say this, I know what you're going to say, we would have some sort of promotion, whether it was a lower rate to open or a better rate to open, on the other side, lower rate for a loan or better rate to open a checking account or get a CD or something. And you would get a slew of customers come in, and sometimes the switching costs, I guess, were high enough where they wouldn't leave, and they'd stay for a while. What would you say to an executive of, let's say, a wealth management or insurance company or even a credit union who had a budget? Right now, they're looking at a budget for advertising and marketing and traditional marketing.
Take two groups of customers as test groups. One, came in on referral, either because you asked them or you went back. You have to get that identified, and then watch their behaviors and their economics over the next few years, if possible, but few periods if you want to make quick decisions. And then get a group that came in on the latest teaser rate, or you bought a bunch of Facebook ad space or Google and search, and just watch the behavior. How much do they buy? How much repeat? How much growth? At what price point? How many referrals do they generate? Just do the math. And what many companies find out is, oh my goodness, the only customers that have a positive net present value, who are actually creating value for my shareholders, are coming in on referral. And all this other stuff, you get a few good customers out of it, but you get an anchor of noisy, demanding, price-sensitive, disloyal churners that destroy the economics of the business and destroys your service system's ability to actually deliver great service regularly. Because, if you got customers who really aren't relationship people at all, and they're demanding and jerking you around, and they only care about a special price, and, they're in the phone queue screwing up the service levels and probably demotivating your service staff. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're building a business on referrals, when somebody's unhappy, this is a disaster. We've got to fix this. You can't afford to have all hands on deck mentality if you've got all these churners that you sucked in through the marketing gimmick fountain.
Well, you did a really good and eloquent job of describing that, because I think some of that gets lost in the mix is when somebody calls up or a frontline person ends up dealing with an unhappy customer. Those complaints, is a complaint tracking system. If you're in certain industries, you're required to track complaints, and that just adds cost that my guess is most companies aren't even tracking.
I agree. It is. Rob Markey and I were chatting the other day about what's the biggest waste that you see in business today, and we both agree it is the waste of bringing in lousy customers and having them screw up your system and screwing up service for everybody else and demotivating your workforce. So that's the major inefficiency that I think businesses, if they could clean that out, would operate at a whole different level of profitability. And it's one of the reasons, in Winning on Purpose, we show the companies who have the highest NPS measured correctly, NPS Prism, the Bain subsidiary that really measures NPS scientific rigor like it were a medical research, double blind, large panels, correctly structured. The highest NPS companies consistently are the ones delivering great returns to their shareholders. We look at a number of industries, and not only do the top NPS companies win for their investors, it's almost a perfect line. The guys with the worst NPS deliver the worst results for their investors, and the guys with the best are knocking it out of the park. The Costco's, the Apples, the people who you can't really, or Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Chick-fil-A. Why are they so profitable? If you apply traditional financial capitalist mindset, you can come up with all sorts of reasons, but they're not the core root cause. The root cause is they are just running this incredibly efficient customer machine that only invests in the kind of customers they can turn into promoters who are the true assets of the business. They come back for more and refer their friends.
Yeah. Speaking of investments and performance of companies over time, I think in the book you developed this index called the Fredy.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty generous. I invest in companies with the highest NPS. Why? Because it's a signal when you measure NPS correctly. With the highest NPS in an industry means they have a customer love flywheel that's running at a much more efficient and effective rate. And they're going to generate more cash than the world recognizes, because the world is now still seen through investors who are, they're blinded by accountants' lenses, or it's a financial capitalist viewpoint, classic reported earnings. And so by investing in the NPS winners, I can see the future. And for me, it helped me more than triple the stock market over the last decade. So, people notice that I fly private. Why? Because Bain paid me so much? No, I've been a Bain fellow. It's sort of a research position for 25 years. Most people listening to this make more money. No, my upside has been investing behind my ideas in companies who have this flywheel humming and are loving customers better than anyone else. And it's made me wealthy. I shared that in the book. It's open to everybody. But I'm shocked that there aren't more people knocking on the door saying, how do who has the highest NPS and how do we get this right? But I think the world is still blinded by this accounting mindset, financial capitalist mindset. They learned it in business school. They read about it in Fortune and Forbes or the Wall Street Journal. They can't see the truth that I tried to communicate in Winning on Purpose.
All right. So people listening to the Delighted Customers podcast, this is a bonus getting investment advice here. But you didn't just say outperformed the market by 10 or 15% over the last 10 years.
No, I crushed it. There is no private equity. There is no hedge. Let me get it technically right, as I say in the book. No mutual fund or ETF tracked by Morningstar matched my performance over the last decade.
And that's impressive. I think you referenced the Vanguard index, which you blew away.
Well, that's the true sort of hurdle rate. Yeah. I think a lot of people think, I made a 10% return on investment. Is that good or bad? Well, it depends on what the stock market did over that same period. If the Vanguard Total Index, which takes all your risk and diversifies it across the whole set of companies, unless you beat the Vanguard Index, you lost money in a true economic sense. You took all this extra risk of one company or a few company bet, and you didn't even match the nearly riskless index.
Yeah. So we're talking about these companies, and I want to talk about one that has been in the news a lot lately, that has been lauded over the last decade or so. That's Southwest Airlines. I heard a statistic that I think it was 0.0004 was the amount of time it took for their trust to erode compared to the number of years they had earned trust with their customers. Is obviously a attention-getting statistic, but what would you say? This is a beloved company. They have love in their branding. What happened there, and does that disprove the? What would you say to someone who says, "Well, that just disproves the theory that you can spend all this time loving customers, but ultimately every company is susceptible."
Oh, I think if one of the other airlines had that happen to them, they'd be bankrupt right now. People are giving Southwest a second chance. Now, whether they respond effectively enough to earn back complete trust, just watch net promoter scores versus the competitors. Delta, I just noticed, is giving away free Wi-Fi. So the competitors are always setting a higher, trying to set a higher standard. Southwest has to keep outperforming the competition, and if they do, they'll continue to crush them. As I showed in the book, their stock returns or maybe it wasn't in the book. It should have been. They crushed the market. They're the leaders. Will companies screw up and maybe go away someday because they really they just either got too big, or their culture was, they're too proud and they think they don't have to learn anymore. Yeah, the world is littered with companies who were outstanding in the top of the game and then crashed and burned. I go through, Jim Collins wrote this outstanding book, Good to Great.
Yeah.
He based it on 11 companies that he thought were great because their financials were great. They'd improved their financial results. And then you look at them over the 10 years after he wrote the book, they were horrible. They were, bankruptcies, embarrassing, billions of dollars in fines, people going to jail. These were great companies. The trend is, you get good and then you collapse. These NPS leaders, they tend to have it because it's a culture of love and they're humble. The test will be, of course, will they figure out how to make sure their customers feel the love and forget about the pain that, life is full of pain. It's not perfect. I made a mistake, but I fix them faster and I am always innovating to make your life better. Those are the kind of companies that I'll stick with.
Yeah. Yeah. And in this case, because it may come up for other companies, I don't know if this is true, but I read this somewhere theoretically from a Southwest longtime employee as an explanation for what happened there. And the explanation was, in a snapshot, there was a slow leak that was happening for 2 or 3 decades, and employees and others were, voicing about, infrastructure that was stagnant, old, didn't keep up, and was smoking basically to try and keep up with, and it was ignored. So, what would you say? Would you say, I mean, for me as a CX practitioner, I would say, we've got to think about the delivery system in which we deliver the experience to our customers. All aspects of it need to be safe and sound and functioning in order to do that. And our ability to hear and listen is all part of that. It's all part of the customer experience. What would you say?
Of course it is, but it's a really complicated world. There's wars in the Ukraine. There's people dropping bombs. There's epidemics. You got to respond to these unforeseen challenges and do it with customer love as your foremost objective function. And when you do that, you set yourself apart from the competition. Southwest doesn't charge for luggage. They don't gouge for change fees. I canceled the flight. You get your money back right away. They are one of the very few that really treat you right. The other guys are doing things like, oh, we're getting rid of all human beings in our service centers. You get to deal with bots and algorithms, but you'll never talk to a human. You go, I'm spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to take my family on a flight. And you can't even build in an ability for me to communicate with a human when something complex comes up. That's not loving. I see a way to make a buck in the short term if the world doesn't change rapidly. And so those are the companies that I'd be skeptical about.
Well, speaking of bots, and that was I think you're talking about Frontier, and that's a great example. We'll see what the future holds for.
I will never fly on an airline that does not say I have humans will help solve your problem.
And that's a great lead into this question about the digital world that we're entering in, and people who would say, well, what role does NPS have in the digital world? We're going to AI and everything's automated and we have bots. What would you say to them when they say NPS is not as important?
They don't get it. They don't see that the customer flywheel is at the center of financial prosperity. The AI applications I see today are to slash costs or sell customers stuff they don't really need. It's not designed to delight customers. It's designed to delight shareholders in the short term. And so I'm a huge skeptic. I think it's powerful. Machine learning is awesome. just apply it with customer love as what it's trying to learn how to do well.
Excellent. Excellent. So let me ask you, can we apply NPS to find success in our own lives?
Yeah, I think, the whole model around NPS is the goal of a business should be to enrich the lives of its customers. And the only way to do that is to have a leadership team who inspires its team members to love customers and have systems that recognize and reward that. So, the power and energy is partly the economic success of the system, but also sort of the moral energy and inspiration that it creates. Meaningful jobs where I make people's lives better. Most employees, that's what they want. So in in just general life, yeah, I think if you sort of think about, I want to invest in relationships where I can make that my partner happy, where I can enrich their life, and my folk, I'm dealing with the kind of people, and where when that happens, instead of them taking and abusing that and seeing how much they can get away with, the kind of most good people, they want relationships in balance. So when they experience someone enriching their life, that they are looking for ways to do that for you. And that is, I think, the way you build a successful life. I give some advice in the last chapter to my grandchildren. Say, this only works when you hang around with good people. And there's some percentage of the population, I don't know if it's 1% or 10%, but they're takers. Some of them are evil, but they're just selfish takers who are out to get what they can. You know what? Get them out of your life. And then with the rest of the people, dedicate yourself to making them happier, and good things happen.
Yeah. I so agree with you about life being short. And those of us who either ourselves or family members have had to deal with serious illness or chronic illness, you start to get a different perspective on life. And I know we started off talking about your cancer, and thankfully we talked before we went on the air that you're doing well, and we're grateful for that. How has your thinking evolved about business in general, and what would you tell yourself 30 years ago? What would you tell your 30-year younger self?
I wasn't nearly aware that doing the right thing had such positive economic consequences,
Mm,
and building communities that help people do the right thing and protect them from being abused by the takers and the nasty players. That when you build an organization with that at its core, it can be stunningly successful, both economically and let's say spiritually. It is making this world better. Whether it's Apple, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Costco, I think Bain and Company probably deserves to be considered in that set. These firms really make our world better. And what else would I say? When you're young and you take psychiatry, you take psychology and learn about Freud, and there's all this, the whole paradigm is about whether you were in love with your mother when you were little. And you know what? There's a guy named Viktor Frankl, who was Freud's contemporary, lived through the concentration camps, Nazi concentration camps. And he came up with a philosophy that makes so much more sense than Freud. I don't know why more. He said, life is tough. There's suffering. The goal is to help others through that and set a role model yourself of how to suffer with dignity. That it's true. And, you get old, bad things happen, and everyone sort of pretends that it doesn't. You have such potential to make people's lives better because it is tough out there. Everyone's got problems and concerns and fears. If you just start thinking about, my job is to make it a little better for everybody else, that is a wonderful life philosophy. And I think business done correctly is actually the best enterprise institution. It's better than charities. It's better than governments. It's better, you name it. A well-run business is not only making life better for employees, customers, investors, it's paying all the taxes that support all the donations and charity, the nonprofit stuff. So people should have a little more appreciation for the miraculous positive power of a well-run enterprise.
Well said. And I think that's part of the reason I do what I do as well is I believe the customer experience and the work that we do in this area makes a difference in the lives of people. And it's really easy to understate the amount of interactions we have on a daily basis. If you're an adult, there's interactions you have with an insurance company, a medical, a government agency, a retailer, an online retailer. I mean, and if you have a lousy experience, it certainly affects your feeling, your demeanor, but it affects the people around you, right? So,
oh yeah, it's a lot of ripple effects out there, and I agree with you.
And I love your focus in this book on the golden rule.
Yeah, because so few people understand it. They think it's trivial or dismiss it as relevant for business success. I think it's at the core of business success when you understand it deeply. I hope people read that chapter. It takes a little bit of a courage for someone like me, and I'm not a philosopher. I don't have a PhD in religion, but I think until you understand this notion of love thy neighbor and the challenges and how it's not just about you and your neighbor, but actually your neighborhood and the communities that nest that relationship. I hope in the reading discussion groups that Winning on Purpose inspires, I hope people spend a lot of time on that chapter.
And I thank you for doing that. I thank you for your vulnerability in sharing right at the outset about your personal challenges. I could see and feel in this book just to use the word spiritual, a higher sense of spirituality and interconnectedness in this world. And I just so appreciate that about the work that you've done.
Well, that's very kind of you. I hope more people read the book and learn from it.
Well, we'll have all that information in the show notes so people can have access to it. And Fred, there's so much to unpack here. I just want to thank you so much for being on the Delighted Customers podcast and blessing us.
Thank you. And, have people go to LinkedIn and read my customer obsession newsletter. It is the leading edge of what will probably be in future books on these subjects. And referrals is going to be a central part of it.
Okay. So is that the best way for people want to reach you?
Yeah, it's a good, simple way is just go on LinkedIn and you can find all the connections.
Excellent. Fred, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Delighted Customers podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode or any of my other ones, hit subscribe or follow. I've got a lot of other great guests that are coming up and a lot of other great content, and I don't want you to miss anything. You can find any links or references on the show in the show notes, and you can find those at my website at empoweredcx.com. That's EMPOWEREDCX.com. Also, make sure to check out the other shows in the Agile Brand Podcast Network by going to www.agilebrandguide.com. The Delighted Customers podcast with Mark Slayton is produced by Missing Link, a Latina-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, they craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content.
The Agile Brand.